Hi, I'm Helga from Helga's Pennsylvania Cooking. Today I'm not actually cooking, but what I am doing is I'm going to try and help you guys out with some basic substitutes. People have been contacting me about substitutes that they could use in cooking every day because being isolated, they can't get out to get the things that they might need, or in some areas, stores have been out of basic things that they needed to cook. So some of the substitutes I'm going to go over are for things like vanilla extract, eggs, zests, fruit zests, different proteins, milk substitutes, heavy cream substitutes, oils, butter, bread. We're going to talk about flours, the different types of flours, and what's the best use for each application, because there's a lot of differences in that. Sugars, cheese, and yeast. So a lot of your basic pantry staples. Oh, and mayonnaise. So let's get to it. Butter substitutes. So, believe it or not, a lot of things can be substituted for butter. Applesauce, fruit purees actually can be substituted for a lot of things in cooking. For oils, for butter. For example, pumpkin puree, 3/4 of a cup of pumpkin puree will be equal to 1 cup of butter. Or applesauce, half of the amount of butter called for is the amount of applesauce. So if you're calling for 1 cup of butter, use half a cup of applesauce. 3/4 cup of oil for every cup of butter. So if you're called for 1 cup of butter, use 3/4 cup of oil. Buttermilk for butter, half a cup of buttermilk to 1 cup of butter. Avocado puree, equal parts, 1 cup of avocado puree to 1 cup of butter. Greek yogurt, half to 1, so half a cup of Greek yogurt for 1 cup of butter. Probably the best combination where you really can hardly tell the difference that you didn't use real butter is 1/4 cup of applesauce with 1/4 cup of buttermilk for every 1 cup of butter. So give that a try, because you're probably going to be able to find some of these things more easily if you're not actually able to find butter. And by the way, I would rather use these substitutes than margarine. Margarine's just oil, and not good oil at that. So yeah. So those are some butter substitutions for you. I will try and put these at the end of the video. I'm probably going to just insert some slides that will have at a glance that you can see these pretty quickly and pretty easily. Heavy cream substitutions. Milk and butter are always, a milk and butter mix is always fine for a heavy cream substitution. Soy milk and olive oil is another. Milk and cornstarch, half and half with butter. Greek yogurt and milk. Cottage cheese and milk. And evaporated milk. Silken tofu and soy milk. Those are some heavy cream substitutions. And we'll talk about milks here in a minute and how to use them. In fact, let me get to them. Okay. So, milks. Milk substitutions. Evaporated milk. Mix with 1 can of water and use as regular milk in your recipe. Condensed milk is super sweet. So if you use condensed milk in a recipe in baking that calls for milk, you're going to have to dial back any sugar you have in the recipe to compensate, or it's going to be really sweet. I mean, you can actually take condensed milk and put that in a pan and actually make caramel out of it. So it's really sweet, but it can be used. You can use coconut milk. Coconut milk will give you a slightly coconutty flavor. You can also use almond, rice, soy, or oat milks as well. Water is the last resort because you won't get the same texture. Yogurt and sour cream, equal amounts. That, if I was going to replace milk, it's either evaporated milk or the yogurt and sour cream mixture will probably give you the truest milk mixture to cook or bake with. Eggs. There are powdered eggs. Oh, there's powdered milk too, but powdered milk really stinks. I would use almost any of these before I use powdered milk because it tastes awful. I'm just saying. Eggs. You can get powdered eggs. They work. They're not real good, but they work. And then there's but for every egg, you can substitute 1 teaspoon of baking soda with 1 tablespoon of vinegar. That will equal 1 egg. Applesauce. 1/4 cup applesauce for 1 egg. Plain or vanilla yogurt, 1/4 cup for 1 egg. And a ripe banana for 1 egg. See, I always have I eat tons of applesauce. I always have tons of applesauce on hand, and we almost always have bananas on hand. And now you know one of the reasons. I almost always have pureed pumpkin on hand as well. Not only for baking, it's also good for the dogs when they have upset tummies, but it's also good in food substitutions. Those are pantry staples here. I always have them on hand. Let's see, vanilla. I had a person ask me about vanilla extract substitutions. You can do 1-to-1 for maple syrup. You will not taste a huge amount of difference. And you can also do half of almond extract for the amount of vanilla called. So if it calls for 1 teaspoon of vanilla, use half a teaspoon of almond extract. So that's for your extracts. I was asked about fruit zest. So for lemon zest, you can use half a teaspoon of lemon extract or 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. For orange zest, you can use 2 tablespoons of fresh orange juice, 1 teaspoon of dried zest, 2 teaspoons of concentrate OJ, half a teaspoon of extract, or 2 teaspoons of candied peel. So those are your options for orange zest. Let's see here. Oils. For 1 cup of oil, substitute a half a cup of fruit puree. That can be the pumpkin or the applesauce or bananas. Any of those will work fine for that. Let's see here. I went over heavy cream. Alright, bread. For different breads, there's Ezekiel bread, which is basically a sprouted bread, corn tortillas, rye bread, lettuce. Believe it or not, the big leaves of lettuce, I used to do that a lot when I was doing more low-carb stuff and still like it. is, I'll put tuna salad or other things and do lettuce wraps or other leafy greens, butternut squash slices, sweet potato flatbread, lots of flatbread choices, naan, which is a type of flatbread, cauliflower crusts, almond flour, oopsie bread. Oopsie bread is basically a low carb bread that is simply eggs, cream cheese, and salt. It's a low carb, no carb bread. Fried eggs. You can use fried eggs as your layers. And there's always sourdough bread. Protein substitutions. So for chicken, you can substitute grilled tofu. The thing about tofu is by itself, it's a blob of nothing. But tofu will take on the taste of whatever you cook it in. So if you have chicken broth or beef broth or bacon fat or any of those things, you can make tofu palatable. It's not just, it has no taste. So like I said, it takes on the character of whatever you cook it with. So tofu, tempeh, veggie chicken, turkey, pork. For pork, veal, chicken breast, or turkey. For beef, or in turn venison, elk. I mean, if you have wild game, moose, any of those red meats you can throw at it. Portobello mushrooms will work as a protein substitute. The big caps, if you slice them, is just like having a slice of burger. They're big, meaty, and really delicious, especially if you fry them in some garlic-infused oil. It's really good. And lentils. Lentils are a good protein substitution there. While we're with that, let's talk cheeses. For cheese, Kite Hill ricotta. Kite Hill ricotta is a vegetarian cheese, so it's great for those that are lactose intolerant. It's made with almond milk, and it's actually a really good substitution. You almost can't tell the difference. So if you're lactose intolerant, it's a good choice, and if you can't find regular cheese, it's a good choice. If you're making like mac and cheese and you don't have cheese, sweet potato sauce. And you're thinking, oh my God, sweet potato sauce, but really, it's decent. You use flour, almond or soy milk, 1 cup of mashed sweet potato, a little mustard, soy sauce, lime juice, and rosemary, and it actually makes a pretty decent macaroni and cheese. Tahini spread, which is basically, well, tahini spread's made all with sesame seeds, but that has a good flavor. Cashew cheese, pestos, and zucchini cheese. Zucchini is so versatile. I mean, you can make zoodles with it. You can do so many things with zucchini that that's another reason why it's one of the staples around here. There's a lot of versatility with a lot of vegetables with some of these dishes. Sugar substitutions. So there are some that I won't use regardless because I think they're just really unhealthy. I'd rather go without. But if you don't have regular sugar, maple syrup, honey, yacon syrup, or YACON syrup. I've tried it. It's decent. It's not my favorite, but it's decent. There's Caro, there's molasses, there's stevia, Swerve. Swerve sugar is a type of sugar. It's better than the Splenda type. It's a lot healthy. It doesn't have the bad side effects. For molasses recipes, molasses substitutes. 1 cup of dark corn syrup, 3/4 cup of packed brown sugar, or 3/4 cup of sugar to 1/4 cup of water will work as molasses substitutes. So that brings me to talking about flour. there are several different kinds of flour, and people really need to be a little bit more educated about them because it will help determine how successful some of your dishes are depending on what kind of flour you use. Flours are divided into categories by basically not only the kind of wheat that they're made from, and if they're made from wheat, but also the percent protein in the flours. The percent protein in the flours affects how much gluten it releases and how elastic it will be. So all-purpose cake, there's all-purpose cake flour, self-rising, oxidants. Protein is what sets them apart, less gluten. All-purpose is your middle-of-the-road flour with a protein of 10 to 12%. Bread flour is a higher percent of 14 to 16%. So it's makes stuff a little bit crispier. And it's made from hard wheat. Pastry flour is less, only 7 to 8%, and it's finely milled and bleached. It's more acidic. Pastry flour is made from soft wheat. It's finer and is good for tender but crumbly baked goods. Bread flour is also best for yeast products. Whole wheat flour is the entire kernels and made from red wheat. White whole wheat flour is hard white wheat and germ brand and endosperm. Oat flour is super fine and fluffy. It's gluten-free, and it can make it. But when baking, it can make things a little bit heavier or a little bit more crumbly. You might need to add more liquid for rise, and so it's not quite so dense. Self-rising flour. Self-rising flour is flour that has baking powder and salt already added into it. So if you don't have self-rising flour and a recipe calls for it, and a recipe that I'm doing tomorrow calls for self-rising flour. It's going to be my buttermilk biscuits, and actually it's a recipe from a dear friend's grandmother. Best biscuits you'll ever have. It calls for self-rising flour, but I don't have self-rising flour on hand. I have bread flour and all kinds of other flours, but self-rising flour, you simply make self-rising flour by having 1 cup of flour, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder or 1/4 teaspoon salt, or 2 teaspoons of baking powder to 1 cup of flour. That is entirely up to you. Both work just fine. There's also semolina flour, which is coarse ground endosperm or wheat durum, and durum wheat is the hardest of all the wheats, and it's the lightest in gluten content. So it's good for pastas because then your pastas don't starch out. You know, like if you make rice noodles and you have regular good hard wheat noodles, rice noodles always taste good the first time, but they starch out something terrible if you go to reheat them or make them again. So that's why semolina is a really good choice for pasta flours. It's 11 to 12% protein. It's strong but not elastic. The gluten in red flour that you would use in your other flours is strong and elastic. So that's why semolina is also labeled as double zero flour. Double zero flour is too fine to make good bread. So it's, like I said, it's great for pasta. It is not so good for breads. And that brings us down to the last thing on my list, I told you this was a long list. Yeast. If you don't have yeast, you can use baking powder. You use 1 to 1 1/4 teaspoon for every 1 cup of flour. You don't use this in breads that need to be kneaded. Okay, so in no knead breads this will work. If you have breads that require kneading, this won't work. Baking soda and acid, which it can be cream of tartar sauce, buttermilk, milk and vinegar mixed the equal ration to make the buttermilk. Replace half and half to 1 teaspoon of yeast. So that'll work in a lot of other baked goods. And if you do want to make bread that requires yeast, I recommend making a starter. And you can make a starter without yeast. You just need flour and water. And it'll take a couple days to develop, but you can make a starter without yeast that will act as yeast in making breads that require yeast for kneading. That is the main list that I have for you. If you have questions, if you guys need other substitutions or other, one other thing. I forgot one other thing. I was asked about foods that would help cool you down or heat you up. I have those, by the way. Foods to help warm you up: bananas, ginger tea, oats, coffee, red meat, sweet potatoes, butternut squash. Drink lots of water and avoid alcohol. Foods to cool you down. And I know some people are going to think this is backwards, but actually chili peppers and peppers in general are a good food to cool you down because they make you sweat. And when you sweat, your skin is releasing that heat and your body is able to cool down. Salad greens, tomatoes, cucumbers, cherries, are all good to help cool your body down. If they warm you up and make you sweat, it's your body's way of being cooled down. So those are some tips for food substitutions. There's lots of other ones probably out there, but this takes care of your main pantry staples of milk, eggs, butter, cream, oil, breads, flours, sugars, cheeses. So if you guys hear of other things, by all means share them. Everybody during this time of quarantine, lockdown, isolation, stay at home, things have changed. Some of this, we're fortunate around here with Amish markets and stuff. We've done pretty well, and really the way we live, we always we stock up on the non-perishable stuff probably 3 to 4 times a year, so we always have that on hand, and we can shop for a couple weeks at a time without a problem, and I need very few things between all that I have in my pantry as staples and that I have home canned. Every October when the Mennonites have their chicken sale, I buy then and got 80 pounds and subdivided it, vacuum sealed it, threw it in the freezer. I did that with sausage. We did that with our venison. We have a deer in the freezer. I did that with also some regular hamburger. Turkeys, like at the holidays when they're on sale, I get a bunch of them on sale. One big one for one of the big dinners, and then we get several smaller ones that we do on the rotisserie. I do that with whole chickens as well. Hams, roast lamb. Passover's coming up this week, and I have a lamb roast that I'll be doing for that. Not to mention, fish and things like that to round it out. We're fortunate. We have freezer space, and we have pantry space to be able to do that. I know not everybody has that available. They have to get more creative, and I will say that Instacart, if you're in town, Instacart delivery services and stuff, take advantage of them. They're great. They'll help you out. If you're in the country, it's a little bit more difficult. But, and that's another tip. Look at your pantry. If you have to, take everything out that you have, catalog what you have, and then meal plan around that. And meal plan, if you are going to the store, make a meal plan for each day of the week. And if you have to, measure it out and put it in Ziploc baggies or containers for what each meal is going to require, so you see how far stuff is going to go and what you're going to need when you go to the store, so that you can do that effectively in one shot, get what you need and have it, so that you're in a good place. Like I said, reorganize your pantry. Go through it, and there's probably old stuff that needs to go. There certainly wasn't mine, but you can catalog it and know exactly what you have and be efficient with what you have. Be creative. If you have stuff and you're not sure what to do with it, go type in the ingredients and see what pops up for recipes. You might be surprised. It's a great time to be creative and a great time to be experimental and inventive. So, give that a shot. Look at it as an opportunity. You might get to try some new things you hadn't otherwise. I tried some stuff this week, being home, that I hadn't had the time to really experiment with before, that you'll probably see in some future vids. So they were a success. They're not always a success, so I'm pretty happy about this. So anyhow, let me know if there's other stuff that you want to see. I'll have a vid out tomorrow, I'm pretty sure, for Cast Iron Wednesday. And this is Holy Week, so I'm making my roast lamb for Passover, and then we'll have a fish dish, and then Sunday is Easter Sunday, and we're still all on stay-at-home orders here in Pennsylvania. So our family's big Easter gathering that I normally host is being postponed. And it'll be a pretty nice celebration when we can finally all get out and celebrate with everybody. So take care, stay home, stay safe, and if you want more ideas and strategies, just let me know. I've been sharing some over on my Helga's Pennsylvania Cooking Facebook page. That's probably the easiest place and fastest place to grab me right away. But feel free to leave comments down below, and I will get back to you guys. Stay safe, and thanks.